Episode 55. You are listening to the new Glam Gal podcast, the podcast where style meets confidence. Conquer the frustration of trying on clothes and learn to dress and love the body you are in. There are no size or weight requirements here. I'm your host, Miss J. Join me, won't you? Hey, Glam Gal, welcome back to the podcast. This month, we are doing a live, ongoing coaching session. I'm inviting you into my fake salon, the salon we have in our heads. I'm asking you to sit on the couch with me, drink some tea, have a little coffee, a little sweet, a little snack, and then let's deep dive into all the things. In our first episode, we talked about what many of you ask me, why do I still feel fat? In the second episode, we talked about being beautiful and finally acknowledging that for yourself. And the last of our series for the month of July, we are going to talk about Judgey Wudgey was a bear. Judgey Wudgey had lots of hair. Now, I know that it is popular to say, don't judge. But there's so much judgment in that, right? I'm not judging, but secretly were you, honestly? So this week, we're going to talk about judgment. Super fun, right? Here's why it's so important to talk about this. Not because I want to give you a lecture on not judging people. Not because I think it's not particularly stylish or charming to going around judging others. I want to talk about it because of all the negative net effect it has for you. What if judgment had nothing to do with the other person? Because it really doesn't. Judgment, and I'm not talking in the legal sense or the biblical sense, I'm talking about the everyday social interaction meaning of judgment. It has no positive net effect for the person who's doing the judging. Now, I know some of you are going to come at me and you're going to be super committed to, what about X person who's committed a crime? What about Y person who's done this horrible terror thing? What about Y person who is just evil? I mean, you're going to throw up all that stuff. And I want to turn it back around to you. We're not talking about everyone else in the universe. We're talking about you and the judgments you have for others, and how it has no net positive effect for yourself. And we're talking about this in the realm of social interactions. This is so important a topic because a lot of my glam gals come from a culture, a diet culture, where you are only allowed to take up space if you're less large than the largest lady in the room. So you enter a room and you're scanning for the quote-unquote fattest gal, so you can determine if you're not her, and then you're allowed to be comfortable and it's okay for you to be in the room with all the other humans. I know this happens because I coach all of you. Or you go in and you scan the room for the prettiest girl in the room and you compare yourself to her and you use her as sort of a measuring stick of well, how pretty is she? And if she's too pretty, am I going to be uncomfortable being in the same room as this girl that I've deemed to be too pretty? Okay, well, let me make myself feel better. I'm going to find the girl I find the ugliest in the room. So essentially what you're doing is you're going around and you're putting a numbering system on people's heads. Okay, well, so you're going to be a 1 and I'm going to assign you a 2. And Joan, that bitch, has always been a 3. And Sandy's kind of a 10, so I'm going to avoid her. And, oh, Michelle, yeah, that Michelle's a 1 for sure. Maybe we don't say that out loud. But when we categorize people and we judge them, we are essentially going around with our red lipstick and writing a number on their forehead. Here's the kicker, though. The truly self-confident, the truly stylish, they don't do any of that. You know why? Not because they have some sort of magic or they're vain or they're arrogant. The truly self-confident, they don't need to compare themselves to anyone. because they recognize that comparison is futile, pointless, and if you really come from a belief that everyone is 100% worthy, that everyone's tank is 100% full of beauty, everyone's beautiful, that everyone's worthwhile, that everyone's worth having compassion for, including ourselves, then comparison doesn't even make sense in that paradigm. What are you comparing to? A 10 to a 10? 100 to 100? Everyone's tank is full. If you come from a paradigm where you're allowed to take up space and so is every other gal, then you enter into a room with love and compassion. You enter into a room being your full self, and so is every other girl allowed to be her full self. No one's too much, no one's extra. In the words of Lizzo, we're all 100% that bitch. I mean, I love it, right? If you all truly were at that place, then there would be no need to be Judgey Wudgey. So how do we get to that place, right? How do we all get to the place where we all believe we're 100% that gal? Well, of course, there's going to be some mindset homework. When you start to notice yourself going into Judgey Wudgey mode, I want you to remember that you're going to essentially judge others in areas where you're already most vulnerable yourself. And that you're just trying to buy yourself some momentary relief by judging the other gals in the room. So in my example, if we're at a fabulous party and you walk in and you look for the quote-unquote fattest lady in the room, it's because you yourself believe you're fat and that you're not allowed to take up space unless you're a certain size. It has nothing to do with that other gal. If you walk into the room and you're scanning for the prettiest face to see how you measure up, it's because you yourself don't fully believe that you're 100% beautiful or pretty yourself. If you're going into the room and you're judging someone as being too loud or too much, it's likely because you struggle with something in that area yourself. You either long to be a little more extroverted and you secretly judge those who are, or you're used to being the center of attention and no one else is allowed to take the spotlight from you. Ultimately, you're going to ask yourself, how does this judgment that I have connect to a thought that I have about myself? How does this connect to a belief I already have about myself, or one that I wish I had? I want you to consider this, because once you're able to see that your judgment is just a reflection of an inward judgment that you have of yourself, I'm asking you to do this exercise not because I want you to feel bad and then judge yourself for being judgy. That's not the point of this. I want you to see that we're all human. We all do this to some degree. It's just a matter of identifying what's really happening when we're doing it so that we can be equal parts amused by it, but also willing and ready to change it so that we can have thoughts that create a net positive effect for ourselves, as opposed to perpetuating thoughts that have a net negative effect. There is no upside to looking for the fattest person in the room. There's no upside to judging yourself as being fatter or smaller than the other gal who you deem to be the fattest person in the room. There's no upside to that. There's no upside to looking for the prettiest face in the room only so you can judge her and yourself. There's no positive side effect of that. Instead, ask yourself, how does this closely relate to a belief or thought I already have about myself? How does this relate to a judgment I already have about myself? Oh, right, because I'm a human. That's amusing. Well, what do I want to think? How do I want to show up? Who do I want to be? And eventually, maybe you'll get to the place where you can borrow the thought and then fully own it and believe it, that we're all allowed to take up space. We are all full of beauty. We are all beautiful. We are all 100% worthy. There's no need to compare 100 to 100 or a 10 to a 10. It's futile. Now I can just go enjoy the other hundreds in the room. I can go enjoy being on a date with myself. I can enjoy my own company. I can sit in silence in my car. I can just chill. No nitpicking required. Think of how differently you would show up in the world if you fully believed that you were 100 and so was the gal next to you. So, my darling glam gal, your mission this week, should you choose to accept it, is to start noticing when your Judgey Wudgey fuzzy buzzy self starts throwing up some shade. Start saying judgmental things. Redirect it back to you. How does this relate to a judgment I have about myself? Where can I find some amusement in my humanity? How do I want to turn this around? How do I want to show up? And your style homework is to start practicing the thought, I'm allowed to take up space, and so are all the other gals. There's no need to compare and despair because we are a room full of 10s. I want you to try it on for size. Let me know how it goes. If anyone struggles with this, I want to hear how it's going for you or the funny stuff that your brain came up with. Because my Tallulah brain says some amazingly, hilariously mean, snarky things, and I have to remind her to play nice with the other humans. All right. If you need help with this, reach out at coach@judithgaton.com. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and you know a friend who would benefit from it, and you don't send it out in a Judgey Wudgey way, you just know they would benefit, you can leave me a review on iTunes to make sure that the other glam gals can check out the podcast, or send it to a friend. The podcast is available on iTunes and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. All right, I've had so much fun making this series for you all, and I'm looking forward to August episodes and September. I have some amazing stuff in store for you all. All right, let's get it. Miss J out.